Unit 1. Formal, Informal, and Non-Formal Education. Listening.
Could you please specify the characteristics of non-formal education?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's a systematic out-of-school activity. It serves voluntary learners of all ages, and it involves part-time study. Moreover, it has flexible criteria for admission. Its objectives are fighting illiteracy and offering not only basic education for out-of-school children, but life and work skills as well.
What about its advantages?
Good question. As you know, non-formal education attempts to fulfill immediate and practical needs. For example, students who couldn't continue their studies for different reasons can get another learning opportunity. Farmers also can improve their agricultural practices thanks to this non-formal education. There are many other examples to understand the importance of non-formal education.
Can we consider evening classes for adults, men and women, to fight illiteracy as non-formal education?
Yes, we certainly can.
One more question, Professor. Is there any relationship between formal and non-formal education?
Absolutely. Look, for dropout students who have left school before the age of, say, 16, non-formal education is a second chance since it aims at reintegrating them. It can also be a substitute program for rural youth who have never had any access to formal schooling. Well, non-formal education can also be a complementary program for implementing agricultural extension for programs for youth who have completed primary school. So, as you notice, our community derives many advantages from non-formal education.
Thanks, sir.
Unit 2. Cultural Issues and Values. Listening. Part 1.
Is there a precise number of existing cultures?
Oh no, there are hundreds if not thousands, as there are many different cultures and subcultures.
Are culture and race the same?
No, there are hundreds of cultures in the world, while we have a limited number of races. Cultural differences are more about human development and not so much about skin colour.
When in conflicts, how do different cultures solve their problems?
This is an important question, which is difficult to answer. In general, if one culture can't dominate another culture, then natural processes lead these cultures to accept each other. Take the example of Quebec. The French culture and the British culture have struggled throughout the previous years, but now they coexist and complement each other for the benefit of Canada.
What role does mass media play in influencing a culture?
Some people think that mass media doesn't have any influence on us. This opinion believes that family behaviour is crucial in shaping children's attitudes. But I think mass media makes a difference. Take the example of our country, America. Years ago, there were many different accents which disappeared. Word usage and pronunciation are becoming more homogenized due to mass media. Besides, the media continually gives us distorted images of other cultures which reinforce the concept of stereotypes.
Unit 2. Listening. Part 2.
If stereotypes are negative, as you said, then why do we use them?
First of all, let's agree on a definition of the term stereotype. Generally speaking, a stereotype, nowadays, refers to a standardized conception of a specific community or group of people. It's used to describe the way society categorizes a community with a set of characteristics. Now let's go back to your question. We use stereotypes partly because it's difficult to understand all the existing cultures. Add to that, there's no tendency to devote much time to deeply understand how people from a different culture behave. Therefore, we accept stereotypes.
How do stereotypes affect our way of thinking?
Stereotypes reduce the difficulties of understanding people who are different from ourselves. They help us by giving a general idea of the community we want to interact with. So, we learn how to act in a different cultural context. However, some stereotypes are inaccurate. What's striking is that we consider different cultures as wrong and develop negative stereotypes. Consequently, we become biased and treat people from a different cultural community inappropriately.
My last question. What's your personal opinion about cultural differences?
We are very different as individuals, let alone as communities and nations. Therefore, to be different doesn't mean you are wrong or not important. On the contrary, we need to accept our differences and be tolerant towards them.
Unit 2. Communication. Expressing lack of understanding and asking for clarification.
Good morning, Mr. Tyler.
Good morning. Please have a seat. Can I help you?
Yes, Mr. Tyler. I'd like to talk to you about an embarrassing experience I had this weekend.
An embarrassing experience? What do you mean?
Well, I was invited by a friend of mine for dinner. His family was really nice and hospitable, but then something happened which made them stare at me.
Stare at you? I don't quite follow you. Could you be more explicit?
Well, actually, didn't seem to like my burping.
Oh my dear, do you mean you burped during the meal? That's culturally inappropriate.
What do you mean by culturally inappropriate?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that what you did is something that is not accepted in our society. It's even, sorry to use the word, disgusting.
Oh dear, but I was taught in my family to thank God whenever I burp.
Really? In that case, all you've got to do is explain the matter to your friend.
Thanks, Mr. Tyler.
You're welcome.
Unit 2. Grammar. Past perfect.
Before I went to England, I had always thought that I would never adjust to the new culture. But my host family were very nice people and did everything to make me feel at home. They had redecorated and refurnished my room and had planned visits to different areas around the country before I arrived. On my first evening, my host family said they had invited some neighbours for dinner to celebrate my arrival. I really had a kind of dream come true feeling. When the neighbours had arrived, the dinner was served and we had a very pleasant evening. But I discovered that the English I had learnt at school was not enough to fully understand what British people say. However, the little English I had learned earlier served as a good start.
Unit 3. Gifts of Youth. Listening.
My name's Sami Obeid. I'm 17. I'm a young scientist searching for a cure for neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's disease. For the past 2 years, I've been conducting laboratory experiments at the Montreal Neurological Institute at McGill University, where 2 doctors are supervising my research. This promising research has earned me many national and international awards, along with 3 university scholarships in Quebec and Ontario. Don't think that intellectual pursuits take up all my time. I'm a black belt and Pan American Taekwondo gold medalist and top scorer in my elite league college soccer team. I also play golf and tennis. My goal in life? Well, do something big for humanity.
I'm Heather Moyer. I'm 19 years old. Since the age of 4, I have been a dedicated volunteer for the Canadian Blood Service, CBS. Determined to create greater public awareness of the needs of Canada's blood supply system, I began telling my own story of needing blood. I soon became the poster child for the Canadian Blood Services. I have logged over 8,000 hours and have created a student-only blood clinic which has been recognized by the Canadian Blood Service as having over 40% eligible donors compared to the Canadian average of 4%. In 2001, I was awarded the CBS National Award. honoring our lifeblood for exceptional contribution to the blood program.
My name's Keith Pierce. I'm 18 years old. I believe that tragedy in life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in having no goals to reach. With this in mind, I started my own web development company, Cybertext Design, at the age of 11. What started out as a one-man operation has now grown to include 3 full-time and 2 part-time employees. Since its founding in 1999, my company has attracted many high-profile clients across North America. My success has not gone unnoticed. Cybertext was listed in the top 100 IT companies in Canada by the National Post Business Magazine. I've represented Canada as one of the 10 under 40 CEOs of Canada at the APEC Young Leaders and Entrepreneurs Forum and was a member of the Team Canada Trade Mission in China in 2001. Even with the demands of my business, I still find time for my studies and my school.
My name is Maren Beeston. I'm 17 years old. Well, there was a lack of music instruction, variety in instrument instruction and vocal teachers in my small town of Hanna, Alberta. I addressed this challenge by founding Summer Slam, a summer rock music school that focused on guitar, piano, drums and vocals. I successfully established and led a committee of youth to budget, fundraise and coordinate this project. Summer Slam is in its 3rd year of operation and is more than providing youth with accessible music instruction. It is about connecting young people with a similar passion who would otherwise not have had the chance to play in a group or meet each other. I'm a founding member of the Hanna Youth Council and have used a youth needs survey to improve local youth activities. I have also been awarded the Canadian Merit Foundation Scholarship National Award.
Unit 3. Communication. Complaining.
Sorry, I have a complaint.
Yes, madam? What's the matter?
Well, I wanted to draw some money from the ATM this morning and the machine got stuck.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. You should have called us then. Our technician might have helped.
Well, I did. He said he'd come down, but he didn't come. I telephoned again. He finally turned up.
But he did fix it in the end, right?
Well, yes.
And you drew your money and got back your credit card?
That's right.
Well, it turned out all right then.
I'm afraid to say no. I had to wait half an hour. That's not good enough.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We'll make sure this will never happen again.
Unit 4. Women and Power. Listening. Part 1.
Few women have contributed more to the global exchange of ideas among women entrepreneurs than Irene Natividad. She has served as the director of the Global Summit of Women for the past 14 years. Here is an extract from the interview. What motivated you to organize the Global Summit of Women?
When you look at the major international meetings of the world, you will find very few women because so few have achieved leadership positions which spell immediate invitations to such meetings. The Global Summit of Women was created for all women leaders to meet across borders, across disciplines, and across class lines in order to be able to conduct exchanges and to share ideas without being hampered by their country's official positions.
Now, could you please tell us what the summit is mainly about?
The summit is about solutions, not about problems, to the issues that women have created to address the problems that they face. It is about bringing other women up the ladder so they don't have to start from zero. If a woman leaves the summit with a major idea, a major contact, or a fresh spirit to begin anew, then I feel it's worth the effort.
Oh, I see. You've been working for 14 years with the same enthusiasm. Is there any secret behind that?
Some of the best moments that make me continue year after year is when I watch the women at the closing reception dancing to the music of another country, as Indian women did to Moroccan music, or Icelandic women to South African rhythms, or Japanese women to Spanish songs. That's a message of unity which is so needed now when the world seems so torn up by national and regional conflicts.
Part 2.
The summit began biannually, then became an annual event. It has been hosted by cities across the continents. How has the summit grown through the years?
When we first began, we mailed thousands of brochures, and we would fret about how the mail would get to developing countries and unreliable post offices. Well, now almost all registrations come through the internet from every part of the world. It really is good evidence of women's efforts to learn more, to explore, and to use technology to get beyond their borders.
Can we have an idea about the number of women participants who attended the summit?
Okay. The summit may have averaged about 400 participants in the past, but the last summit brought almost 700 women to Morocco from 80 countries. I was so proud of the women who came, despite their fears and with the intent to go ahead with their plans no matter what.
You have been very successful at past summits in drawing high-level government representatives to the event. What role do these government leaders play at the summit?
We had the first Women's Ministerial Roundtable at the last summit in Morocco, and it was attended by 43 women ministers from several different countries. The report to the summit delegates indicated that they learned new strategies from each other.
Thanks a lot, Irene, for giving us this opportunity to talk to you.
You're welcome.
Unit 5, Advances in Science and Technology. Listening, Part 1.
Good morning, Nancy, and welcome to this new edition of our program. In your view, what is the importance of ICT to the African continent?
Well, among the most interesting applications of information technology in Africa are those with a social impact. I would point out that many African countries are now committed to bringing information technologies to schools at all levels, with special attention to poor rural schools. In Nigeria, information technology has been brought to women in rural areas. The women have used the technology in many ways, including peacekeeping and improving the health of their families and their communities. In a rural village in Uganda, the women of the community can now go to the telecentre to use a CD-ROM in Luganda, their language, to learn ways in which they can increase their own and their families' incomes.
Part 2.
Sounds very interesting, isn't it? Now, what's the impact of ICT on third world women's lives?
Information technology is a tremendous tool for women in developing countries. Women far outnumber men among the poor of the world. They are far more likely to be isolated, to lack education, to be devoid of resources to ameliorate their situation and that of their families. Information technology can be a tool to end their isolation, to give them access to government and decision makers, and to improve their families, education and health. Obviously, many barriers stand between them and access to this technology. I see making information technology accessible to the poor women of the world as the hardest but perhaps the most important challenge for those who promote information technology for development.
Part 3.
Would you tell us what new projects are ahead?
Well, various bilateral, multilateral, and NGO initiatives are on the scene. What I find more exciting is that African countries themselves have done a lot to take up the information technology for development agenda. Many of them have made information technology for development a development priority. They are developing their own ICT strategies, finding financing from national and external sources.
My last question, Nancy. What are your dreams for Africa in ICT?
African children, girls and boys, having the same access to information and knowledge from an early age as children in rich countries, and an end to information poverty and digital divide.
Unit 5. Communication, Expressing Opinion. You know what? My daughter has asked me to buy her a cell phone. Do you think I should buy her one?
Well, if you ask me, I wouldn't buy it for her for the simple reason that she's too young for that kind of stuff. My son has asked me to do the same, but my answer was a sharp no. I think he's not yet responsible enough to cope with a cell phone.
Well, I've never thought about it that way. But what about the other kids? I mean her friends. They already have cell phones. Don't you think this would be a bit demeaning for her? Besides, most parents buy their kids cell phones for safety and emergency reasons, like the kids could call if they're gonna be late.
I'm afraid I can't agree with you on your last point. I really feel that a cell phone shouldn't be an excuse for being late. One more thing. Did you think about the money they would spend on text messages, ringtones, and other stuff?
I see what you mean. It can cost a lot of money. You're right about that. But don't you think you could limit your kids' use of the cell phone by having a prepaid minute option?
Well, that could be a good idea. The problem is, do the kids really need a cell phone? I still can't find a solid reason for their having one.
Unit 6. Humor. Listening. Humor is part of our humanity. Human beings are the only creatures on earth that can laugh and smile. When we show that we have a sense of humor, when we do laugh and smile, we're doing something that is exclusively human. People who are very serious and uptight and won't crack a smile are not revealing the humanity that helps us connect to others. As Victor Borge, the Danish pianist comedian, said, laughter is the shortest distance between two people.
Right, yet I've noticed in your writings and presentations that you assert that laughter and humour are separate constructs, although they are clearly very integral. Can you explain how humour and laughter are differentiated?
That's a very important point. Well, a sense of humor is the ability to see the non-serious element in a situation. The ability to appreciate that something is either unexpected or is exaggerated in a way that is somehow funny. Laughter, on the other hand, is a physical act. Laughter is almost always the physical response to humor, but it's not the only one. It's much easier scientifically to measure the physiological changes that accompany laughter, so to speak. We do know a lot about the physiology of laughter, and many of the wonderful health benefits it gives people are similar to the benefits one gets from exercising.
The power of humour to help foster and create connections between people is such an important point. I'm curious though, in working with patients, have you ever found that there are times when you have to be careful about when you use and do not use humour with them?
Certainly. You have to be aware that there definitely are wrong times to use humor. The introduction of humor is not necessarily always appropriate. It's not always timely. Also, humor has to be appealing to the tastes of the individual. Not all people have the same taste in humor.
That's right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to share with our listeners so much invaluable information about humour and laughter and their importance in both our individual and social lives.
Thank you for inviting me, and I just want everyone to keep on laughing. Let's just say that. Unit 6. Communication. Agreeing and disagreeing. Hi guys, mind if I join you?
Not at all. Do have a seat. We're talking about the company's new policy.
I think the new manager has done the biggest mistake by reducing the number of employees.
Well, I think you're right. That's really a big mistake.
I'm not sure I agree with you. The company was really overstaffed. So laying off some employees may help reduce the expenses.
That's true, but how can the company grow with a very limited number of employees? You already complain of being overworked, both of you.
You're absolutely right. We have to stay very late these days.
Yes, you're right, but this happens only once in a while.
Unit 6. Grammar. Conditional Type 3.
I still shudder at the thought of the experience I once had when I was at high school. One day my friends and I decided to go on a picnic to the mountain. I knew that my parents wouldn't hear of the idea, so I just got up early and joined my friends without telling them. Unfortunately, the adventure was not as successful as we had hoped it would be. We had a serious road accident, and one of our friends was seriously hurt. The taxi driver was driving so quickly, and the road was so narrow and in a bad condition. My parents were so worried about me and started getting in touch with relatives and my closest friends. I knew they would do this, but I couldn't call them, for I felt so ashamed of having made such a big mistake.
Unit 7. Citizenship. Listening.
Dr. Hyde, thank you for accepting our invitation for this interview.
I'm pleased to be here with you.
There has recently been a great concern about education for citizenship. Why all this concern?
Well, education for citizenship is important because every society needs people to contribute effectively in a variety of ways to the future health and well-being of the community and the environment, locally, nationally, and globally. Fostering active and responsible citizens contributes to the process of developing a healthy and dynamic culture of democratic participation.
How can we motivate people to exercise their citizenship effectively then?
Let me start with this first. While all individuals share the rights and responsibilities of citizenship, regardless of status, knowledge, or skill, it's clear that citizenship may be exercised with different degrees of effectiveness. A variety of personal and social circumstances can impede a person's capacity for active citizenship.
Would you please make this point clear?
Certainly. As an example, homeless young people may not secure the right to vote simply because they have no address. More generally, many young people living in poverty and experiencing other forms of disadvantage feel alienated. They see little point in participating in a system that seems remote from their concerns. It's in the interest of both individuals and society as a whole that the rights and responsibilities of citizenship are well understood, that young people develop the capability needed to function effectively as citizens in modern society.
I see. Does school have any role here to play?
Absolutely.
So, how can the school contribute to fostering an active and responsible citizenship?
Well, the opportunities for learning that are provided in schools and early education settings make important contributions to the process of educating for active and responsible citizenship. At the same time, the contributions of formal education need to be seen alongside and in conjunction with other influences. These include the influences of parents, the media, and opportunities for community-based learning.
What do you think both the school and community can do to prepare active and responsible citizens for the future?
Well, I think there should be some kind of awareness that citizenship is best exercised through experience and interaction with others. So both school and community should see to it that young people are given more opportunities to manifest and develop this active and responsible citizenship now to prepare them for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde, for these enlightening ideas about education for citizenship.
You're welcome. Unit 7. Communication. Expressing regret.
You know, sometimes I feel sorry I went into business.
Really? Don't you like what you're doing?
Well, I get a good salary, but the job doesn't really interest me. I wish I hadn't followed my family's advice. If I had gone for law, I could have been a lawyer.
There are thousands of university graduates going in for that job, though.
Yes, I know. But still, I regret having chosen this career.
Unit 8. Brain Drain. Listening. Part 1.
The 3 million Moroccans living abroad represent about 10% of the country's resident population, and their money transfers are its biggest foreign currency source after tourism. An official report earlier this year said Morocco must create 400,000 jobs annually over the next 10 years to prevent mass unemployment, especially among graduates. The government is turning to expatriates to help build the businesses that will create those jobs. But many of those who fled unemployment in Morocco now have good jobs, higher living standards, and foreign educated children. Even those struggling in the European job market who feel discriminated against because of their origins say a return to Morocco holds risks and uncertain rewards. It's already hard enough getting by in France, says Jawad Wago, a 21-year-old engineer from Paris, as he queued in the northern port of Tangier for the ferry to Spain. If I try something new here, it'll be harder.
Part 2.
The government is trying to boost slow economic growth by enacting investment-friendly reforms and making the banking sector more robust to cut lending rates. High-value industrial exports are being nurtured with free trade deals and heavy transport infrastructure investment to reduce the economy's reliance on traditional agriculture. While foreign investment in Morocco is booming, enhanced by large-scale tourism and property developments, expatriates appear reluctant to sink their money into smaller, job-creating enterprises. Some $2.58 billion were repatriated in the first half of 2006, 24% more than a year earlier, but most want to support families and build second homes. Many Moroccans living abroad say they are discouraged to start a business by complex administrative procedures, the risk of long delays in getting the right documents, and a perception that you need powerful contacts in business and government. This reticence is linked to a totally outdated image, says Jalul Samsam, head of Morocco's Northern Regional Investment Centre, saying anyone wanting to start up a business could have all the documents they need from one location within 48 hours. At annual meet and greet events, to coincide with the summer exodus to the motherland, officials try to convince Moroccans based abroad that setting up shop at home has never been easier. Procedures are far simpler. Interest rates have fallen, and the state offers tax breaks and helps buying land. Nezha Shakrouni, the Minister of Moroccans living abroad, said, "Yes, there are still many problems. We are doing our best to solve them."
Unit 9. Sustainable Development. Listening. Part 1.
I'm Bob Doty with the VOA Special English Economics Report. Development banks are international lending groups. They lend money to developing countries to help fuel economic growth and social progress. They are not part of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, or the United Nations. The money comes from member countries and borrowing on world markets. Development banks provide long-term loans at market rates. They provide even longer-term loans at below-market interest rates. These banks also provide technical assistance and advice.
Part 2.
There are 4 main ones. The oldest is the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington, D.C. It began in 1959. President Juscelino Kubitschek of Brazil had proposed a bank to aid economic growth in the Americas. The Organization of American States agreed. Today, the bank is worth over $100,000 million. It holds only 4% of that. The other money is guaranteed by its members. 47 countries around the world own the bank. The United States owns 30% as the largest shareholder. 26 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean borrow from the bank. The African Development Bank has its roots in an agreement signed in Sudan in 1963. It is based in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. There are 24 members in the Americas, Europe, and Asia, in addition to the 53 in Africa. The country with the most votes in the bank is Nigeria, followed, as of July, by the United States, Japan, and Egypt. The Asian Development Bank started in 1966. It is based in Manila, in the Philippines. There are 63 members, mostly in Asia. Like all development banks, it is supervised by a board of governors. Traditionally, the bank president is Japanese. Japan and the United States were equally the top shareholders at the end of last year, followed by China, India, and Australia. The bank says Indonesia has borrowed the most, but China, Pakistan, and India have also been major borrowers in recent years. The newest of the four main development banks is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It opened in 1991 as the Soviet Union broke apart. The main office is in London. The United States is the largest shareholder. The bank was formed to support economic growth and democracy in Central Europe. This VOA Special English Economics Report was written by Mario Ritter.
Unit 9. Communication. Expressing certainty and uncertainty.
Hi, Francois. Have you heard about Development for All Association?
Certainly. It's a well-known association with a good reputation.
Some of my colleagues believe it can play a decisive role in our small town.
I'm doubtful about those biased judgments, because the fruits of its participation in many projects in various African countries are evident to everyone. By the way, I've heard that it's possible it will open its first office in our town.
I heard the same thing, but I'm not sure about that.
Unit 10. International Organizations. Listening.
Mr. Snow is a journalist. He is interviewing Mr. Altman, a former political prisoner who is now president of an association which works for the improvement of life in prisons.
Good morning, Mr. Altman. You spent some time in prison, and we know that it wasn't a pleasant experience. Would you please tell us if you used to receive visits in the prison you were in?
Well, never before the Red Cross representatives came to our prison. That was the first time people came from outside to visit us. I vaguely knew that there was some sort of organization called the Red Cross in Geneva that helped poor, oppressed people, but that's all. I didn't know that they would be able to get into our prison.
What did they do during that visit?
They looked everywhere, not just where the prison authorities wanted them to look. They obviously wanted the whole picture, and that won our confidence.
What were the Red Cross representatives like, Mr. Altman?
Well, they were effective and secret. They had the trust of both sides. The authorities gave them access to places where others never went, and the prisoners saw them as as the saying goes, as a light in the darkness.
And how often did they visit you?
Well, during the entire 6 months we were in prison, we had Red Cross visits. They never let us down. They came twice a week, sometimes more. They took down our names and made lists. They were always new arrivals in the prison, and we always did what we could to have their names entered onto the list as soon as possible, because that list was what protected us.
How important is it for a prisoner to have his or her name entered onto the Red Cross lists?
Let me tell you something. If I'm alive today, it's only because I was able to give my name to the Red Cross representative. I'll never forget that moment. That delegate inspired confidence and made me feel free to speak. He asked me a lot of questions about myself, about my situation, about my family. He didn't take a position one way or another. He just listened.
Was there anything you would have liked the Red Cross to do for prisoners while you were in prison?
Oh, yes. We were in prison and we were suffering. We would have liked the Red Cross to tell the international press about it. We would really have appreciated that. But when you think about it, doing that, revealing all that they have seen, might have provoked the authorities into banning them from the prisons. If that happened, we would have been the losers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Artman, for the good job you have been doing since you gained freedom. Good luck to you and to your association.
Unit 10. Communication. Responding to good and bad news.
Steve, I've got to talk to you.
Sure, what's up?
I really don't know how to say it, but I feel I ought to tell you.
Just go ahead. What is it?
Well, I'm really sorry to say that your son was caught red-handed this morning.
What? What do you mean red-handed?
I saw him hanging around with some boys. They were smoking crack.
Oh dear. Are you sure it was him?
Yes, I'm sure it was him.